What exempting torture would produce insanity quicker than this treatment? Take a perfectly sane and healthy woman, shut her up, do not allow her to talk or move, give her bad food and harsh treatment, and see how long it will take to make her insane. 2 months would make her a mental and physical wreck. Nellie Bly, New York World, October 16th, 1887. Nellie Bly's article, appearing on the front page of the New York World, differed from others that had been written in the late 1800s about the abuse in New York insane asylums. The author, a young 23-year-old, had feigned insanity and been committed to Blackwell Island. Her exposé based on her first-hand experiences resulted in massive reform. That was quite a legacy for any journalist, particularly a woman. But Nellie Bly had only just begun her journey to use social reform issues to lead women journalists from the society section to the front page.
Nellie Bly, bring the broom along. We'll sweep the kitchen clean, my dear, and have a little song.
The woman who would become Nellie Bly was born Elizabeth Cochran on May 5, 1864. At a time when human rights were a low priority in the minds of most Americans. The daughter of a wealthy businessman, she stood out even as a child, dressing in bright pink instead of the traditional drab colors of the day. When she was 6, her father died without a will, which allowed his sons from a previous marriage to inherit, leaving Elizabeth and her siblings in poverty. When her mother's new husband proved abusive, the 11-year-old Elizabeth demanded that her mother get a divorce and testified against her stepfather in court. She vowed to never let a man control her destiny. Elizabeth was working in her family's boarding house when she read a newspaper article in the January 1885 Pittsburgh Dispatch entitled "What Girls Are Good For," admonishing women for envisioning careers outside their home.
Nellie reads this column and just goes into a rage because, of course, he has not addressed the question of the young women who have really no choice but to make their way. They don't have families taking care of them.
A few days later, she responded to editor George Madden's request that the little orphan girl contact him and agreed to write a rebuttal to his original article. Her response, published January 25, 1885, earned her a full-time position. Starting salary, $5 a week. Madden suggested that she write under the pseudonym Nellie Bly, the name of an old Stephen Foster song. Nellie was determined, as the song suggested, to sweep the kitchen clean, my dear. The ensuing months, she wrote dozens of articles about the problems facing women and children. Child labor, sweatshops, and choir girls. The stories drew praise from readers and the ire of factory and business owners who did not like the criticism. She was demoted to the society page. Explaining that she was too impatient to work at the usual duties assigned to women on newspapers, she convinced her boss to let her travel through Mexico and write about her experiences. But what began as a travel piece quickly turned into an exposé about political corruption and the squalid living conditions of the poor. She was forced to leave Mexico under the threat of arrest, but she did get her story. 3 months later, she wrote her boss a note. "Dear QO, I am off for New York. Look out for me. Bly." Determined to write for Joseph Pulitzer's New York World, the most prestigious newspaper in New York, Nellie wormed her way into the offices of the 3 most successful newspapers in New York, telling their editors she was writing a story about a woman journalist looking for a job. Her story, published by the Dispatch, caught the attention of World managing editor John Cockrell. He offered her a job, if she could get inside of Blackwell Island's insane asylum and report firsthand about the questionable living conditions and treatment of the patients. The October 1887 articles secured her position as the world's first female investigative reporter at a time period when people were ready to listen to stories about the injustices heaped upon the heads of the disadvantaged, and the corruption and quirks of the rich and famous.
Anybody who can't be made to fit neatly is going to be put away. I mean, they're going to find a way to get rid of that person. That's what's so groundbreaking about the work that Nellie Bly did, is that it reinforces this notion that, well, wait a minute, asylums may not be hospitals. They may be just clearinghouses for people that society finds troublesome, and that's hugely scandalous.
In the next year, as a reporter for The World, Bly often slipped undercover, exposing crooked lobbyists, revealing the plight of unwanted babies, and reporting the working conditions in factories. She became so popular that The World would often use her name in headlines. Readers couldn't wait to see what Nellie Bly would do next. On November 14, 1889, Nellie Bly gave readers something unbelievable to read about. She stepped onto the ocean liner Augusta Victoria by herself, carrying just a small satchel. She had spent several weeks convincing her editors to allow her to take a trip that would break Jules Verne's fictional record of circumnavigating the world in 80 days.
Finally, he comes to her and he says, "Can you leave for around the world the day after tomorrow? The steamship Augusta Victoria is leaving for Southampton, England. Can you be ready?" And she says, "Yes, I can."
And so for the next 72 days, 6 hours, 11 minutes, and 14 seconds, her adventures in places like England, Egypt, and Japan enthralled world readers, and proved that a woman could do anything a man could do. When she stepped off the ship in New York, she had become an international celebrity. The World's popularity and circulation had increased greatly. But Bly was not offered a bonus like the men journalists had been. Outraged, Nellie Bly resigned. Bly capitalized on advertising endorsements. She lectured and wrote the book Around the World in 72 days. Then, on September 17, 1893, the front page of The World proclaimed Nellie Bly again. The new editor had convinced her to return to The World. The next 3 years, Bly wrote articles about police corruption, covered the violent Pullman labor strike from the workers' point of view instead of reporting on the violence, and interviewed women like suffragist Susan B. Anthony and anarchist Emma Goldman. In 1895, on the train ride home from a journey through the drought-stricken Great Plains, Bly discussed the terrible conditions the homesteaders were enduring with industrialist Robert Seaman. A year later, she quit The World and married Seaman. Bly re-identified herself as Elizabeth Cochrane Seaman and became a key component in her husband's company. A short time after Seaman's death in 1904, she was lauded as the world's leading female industrialist for her innovative practices and numerous patents that included child and health care and equal pay for women. She replaced the steam machinery and switched to electricity and claimed to have quadrupled profits. Ironically, the same type of corruption and fraud by trusted employees that she had so often exposed forced Bly into bankruptcy in 1914. Down, but never out, the 40-year-old Bly contacted the New York Journal and made arrangements to become the country's first female war correspondent. Bly spent 5 years in Vienna, covering every aspect of World War I. She returned to questions about her patriotic loyalty and a determination to persevere. She soon had her own column in the Evening Journal, and from it, she led a crusade to help women, children, and others who faced hard times. Critics declare that Bly, who died in 1922, 2 years after seeing women win the right to vote, often contradicted herself, but Brooke Kroger, her biographer, said, Bly's legacy was that of a woman who used every position as an opportunity to make a difference in other people's lives. She refused to identify herself as an advocate for any specific movement, but she did use her new type of journalism to work for the poor and the unheard, to expose fraud and corruption. She kicked open the door for women in journalism, and always followed her own formula for success. Energy rightly applied and directed can accomplish anything. Nellie Bly did indeed lead a women's journalistic battle to sweep the kitchen clean, and always did it her way.